In the kingdom of Baron, powerful airships rule the skies. At the head of this elite fighting force is Cecil, captain of the Red Wings. As our adventure begins, Cecil and his squadron are ordered to steal a powerful crystal from a rival kingdom. Upon their return, Cecil questions the king orders and is stripped of his command. To prove his loyalty, he must slay a dreadful monster and deliver a mysterious package to a neighboring town. But when the package explodes, destroying everyone, Cecil and his friend Kane vow to fight the king's dark forces. Will you be able to save the world from their evil plan to control the crystals? Get ready for the most challenging role-playing adventure ever. This is Final Fantasy II from Squaresoft, released in 1991. Wait a minute, why am I calling it Final Fantasy II? Because that's what we are looking at. We are looking at the American version of Final Fantasy II. Sit down, shut up. It's a role-playing game developed and published by Square, not even Squaresoft at the time, just Square for the Super Nintendo, released in 1991. It is the fourth main installment of the Final Fantasy series that follows Cecil, a Dark Knight, as he tries to prevent the sorcerer Golbez from seizing powerful crystals and destroying the world. He is joined on his quest by a frequently changing group of allies. It introduced innovations that became staples of the Final Fantasy game in the future. In general, its active time battle system that was used in 5 subsequent Final Fantasy games. Unlike prior games in the series, 4 gave each character their own unchangeable character class, which I happen to really like. It has been ported to several other platforms with varying differences. An enhanced remake, also called Final Fantasy IV, with 3D graphics, was released for the DS in 2007 and 8. The game was retitled Final Fantasy II during its initial release outside, as the original Final Fantasy II and III had not been released outside of Japan at the time. All later localizations, which began to appear after Final Fantasy VII, used the original title. With its character-driven plot, use of new technologies, and critically acclaimed score by Nobuo Uematsu, Final Fantasy IV is regarded as a landmark of the series and of the role-playing genre. With various incarnations of the game, it has sold more than 4 million copies worldwide. A sequel, Final Fantasy IV The After Years, was released for the Japanese mobile phones in 2008 and worldwide via the Wii Shop channel on June 1st, 2009. In 2011, both Final Fantasy IV and The After Years were released for the PSP as part of the compilation PS4 The Complete Collection, which also included a new game set between the two, Final Fantasy IV Interlude. Ports of the DS remake were also released for iOS, Android, and for Windows. Final Fantasy IV, the player controls a large cast of characters and completes quests to advance the story. Characters move and interact with people and enemies on a field map, which may represent a variety of settings, such as towers, caves, and forests. Travel between areas occurs on a world map, and we can use towns to replenish strength, buy equipment, and discover clues about the next destination. Conversely, the player fights monsters at random intervals on the world map and in dungeons. In player, the player has the option to fight, use magic or an item, retreat, change character positions, parry, or pause. Certain characters have special abilities. The game was the first in the series to allow the player to control up to 5 characters in the party. Previous games had limited the party to 4. Player characters and monsters have HP. When the character's HP captioned below in the main battle screen, attacks reduce remaining HP until none are left, at which point the character faints or if the monster dies. If all characters are defeated, the game must be restored from a save file, blah 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 blah. You all know that. Final Fantasy IV, or II, introduced the Active Time Battle, or ATB system, which differed from the turn-based designs of previous RPG. The ATB system centers on the player inputting orders for a character in real time during battles. The system has been used in many subsequent Square games. Each character has certain strengths and weaknesses. For instance, a strong magic user may have low defense, while a physical fighter may have low agility. Like other Final Fantasy games, characters gain new, more powerful abilities with battle experience. Magic is classified as either white for healing and support, black for offense, or summon or call magic for summoning monsters to attack or carry out specialized tasks. A fourth type, ninjutsu, consists of support and offense magic and is available to only 1 character. Magic users, who account for 8 of the 12 playable characters, gain magic spells and pre-programmed experience points or fixed story events. The game includes balance points gains, items, and rewards to eliminate long sessions of grinding. Due to the SNES's greater processing power, FF2 contains improved graphics when compared to previous Final Fantasy titles, all of which were released on the NES. The game employs the Super NES's Mode 7 technology to give enhanced magic spell visuals and to make airship travel more dramatic by scaling and tilting the ground for a bird's eye view. Final Fantasy IV takes place on Earth, also known as the Blue Planet, which consists of a surface world inhabited by humans and an underground inhabited by dwarves. An artificial moon orbits the planet, upon which Lunarians live. Lunarians are a race of beings originally from a world which was destroyed, becoming the asteroid belt surrounding the Blue Planet, and are identified by a moon-shaped crest on their forehead. They created the artificial moon, resting until a time when they believe they can coexist with humans. A second natural moon orbits the Blue Planet as well, although it is never visited in the game. So much to talk about. After completing Final Fantasy III in 1990, Square planned to develop 2 Final Fantasy games, one for the NES and the other for the Super Nintendo, to be known as Final Fantasy IV and V, respectively. Due to financial and scheduling constraints, Square dropped plans for the NES game and continued development of the Super Nintendo version, retitled Final Fantasy IV. A mock-up screenshot of the cancelled title was produced for a Japanese magazine, but little other information exists about it. Series creator and director Hironobu Sakaguchi stated the NES version was approximately 80% complete, and certain ideas were used for the Super Nintendo version. Final Fantasy IV's lead designer Takeshi Tokida's first project at Square as a full-time employee. But before this, he wanted a career as a theater actor, but working on the game made him decide to become a great creator of video games. Initially, Hiromichi Tanaka, the main designer of 3, was also involved in development for the game. However, Tanaka wanted to create a seamless battle system that had no separate battle screen and was not menu-driven, and since Final Fantasy IV was not going in that direction, he changed development teams to work on Secret of Mana instead. The development team of Final Fantasy IV contained 14 people in total, and the game was completed in roughly a year. Initial ideas were contributed by Sakaguchi, including the entire storyline in the name of Baron's Royal Air Force, the Red Wings. The ATB setup was conceived and designed by Hiroyuki Ito when he was inspired while watching a Formula 1 race and seeing racers pass each other at different speeds. This gave him the idea of different speed values for individual characters. The system was developed by Kazuhiki Aoki, Ito, and Hiyoki Matsui. As the game's lead designer, Tokida wrote the scenario and contributed pixel art. He stated there was a lot of pressure and that the project would not have been completed if he did not work diligently on it. The game's script had to be reduced to 1/4 its original length due to cartridge storage limits, but Takeda made sure only unnecessary dialogue was cut rather than actual story elements, as the graphical capabilities of the Super Famicom allowed regular series character designer Yoshitaka Amano to make more elaborate character designs than in previous installments, with the characters' personalities already evident from the images. Takeda felt the reduced script length improved the pacing of the game. Still, he acknowledges that some parts of the story were unclear or not looked at in depth until later ports and remakes. One of the ideas not included, due to time and space constraints, was a dungeon near the end of the game where each character would have to progress on their own. This dungeon would be included in the Game Boy Advance version as the Lunar Ruins. Because of the previous 2 installments, Final Fantasy had not been localized. Final Fantasy IV was distributed as Final Fantasy II to maintain naming continuity. This remained the norm until the release of Final Fantasy VII in North America and subsequent releases of the original Final Fantasy II and 3 on various platforms. Final Fantasy II since has gone under the title of Final Fantasy IV. The English localization retains the storyline, graphics, and sound, but developers significantly reduced the difficulty for beginning gamers. They've released the US version in Japan as Final Fantasy IV Easy. Square was worried that Western fans would find it difficult to adjust to the game's complexity due to not having played the previous 2 entries, so decreased the overall depth considerably. Other changes include the removal of overt Judeo-Christian religious references and certain potential objectionable graphics. For example, the magic spell Holy was renamed White, all references to prayer were eliminated, the Tower of Prayer in Westmedia was renamed to the Tower of Wishes, direct references to death were omitted, although several characters clearly died during the course of the game. The translation was changed in accordance with Nintendo of America's censorship policies. Whew. There are 1 billion re-releases. Let's count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 different versions altogether of Final Fantasy IV, and you'd tell me Square's not milking it. The game received critical acclaim upon release. Famitsu's panel of 4 reviewers gave it 9, 9, 10, and 8, adding up to an overall score of 36 out of 40, one of the highest scores that are awarded to any game in 1991, second only to A Link to the Past. In 1991, Nintendo Power proclaimed it set a new standard of excellence for role-playing games. They praised the battles as being more interesting than in previous RPGs because the player must make snap decisions and the enemies don't wait for you to make up your mind, and concluded that the story, graphics, play, and sound will keep fans riveted. Electronic Gaming Monthly panel of 4 gave it 8, 9, 7, and 8 out of 10, adding up to 32 out of 40 overall. In its December 91 issue, Ed Semrad, who gave it a 9, stated Square has just redefined what the ultimate RPG should be like, noting the spectacular Mode 7 effects, outstanding graphics, and a quest unequaled in a video game, concluding that it makes use of all the Super Nintendo has to offer and is the best to date. Ken Williams gave it an 8, stating that it's totally awesome RPG. The story is actually coherent and the plot moves along with a combination of speaking sequences and battle. On the other hand, Martin Alessi, who disliked role-playing games, gave it a 7. They gave the game an award in 1991 as Best RPG video game, stating that the Mode 7 here is great and Square does a spectacular job in using it to zoom in and away from the planet, and that the quest is huge and also one of the most difficult ever attempted in a video game. I could go on and on and on. There's so much to talk about, and I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to tell you that this is a fantastic game. It has a fantastic story. It tells it super, super well. This is one of my favorite Final Fantasies of all time.